Exactly. Which is now the new course.
You turn on the microphone.
Want to hit the. Carmen, can you hear us? Jeff, can you hear us?
No, you're clear.
Okay.
All right, it's 5:30. Let's call the meeting to order. And take roll. I'm here. Carmen Gasparo,
Here.
James Aarons,
Here.
Karen Jansen, Colette Bernadette,
Be here.
Rosa Stone.
Here.
Okay, citizen comment. Do we have, at this time, individuals can speak on,
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to put it on.
any topic on the agenda for up to 3 minutes. Time extensions are at the discretion of the committee chair. No action can be taken on items not listed except as a possible referral to committee, staff, or future agenda item. Do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to speak? I don't see anybody. Anybody in the room that would like to speak? Come on up. Could you give us your name and address?
My name is Mark McCleary. My address is 1 Maplewood Court.
Okay. Email.
I think we emailed yesterday. And I've been
What you
arrested.
say, which Maplewood Court?
One.
Maplewood, okay. All right.
3 minutes ready. Practice.
Okay, go ahead.
So my name is Mark McCleary. Nice to meet you all. I've been a resident of Wood Point for 29 years. And I am a amateur beekeeper. And so I'm not on the agenda today, as you mentioned, so we can't really get into it, but I do request to get on the agenda in a month and talk a little bit about the Keeping Bees section 36-71 of the zoning regulations. And I thought I would just talk about some of the awesome things about bees, because what I'd love to be able to do is next month talk to you about ways that will make it easier to be a beekeeper in the village, because some of the new regulations make it really, really, really hard to be a beekeeper. But some of the stuff about bees, 80% of our flowers here in Southeast Wisconsin are pollinated by bees. 85% food crops, but we don't have a lot of farmers around here, so I don't think that's relevant. The European honeybees, which is what we have, are the only variety of the 17 that we have in Wind Point that store honey. So they do all the work. They're the ones doing the work. And so the more of them we have, the better. The good news is that where we do have bees, they travel up to 2 miles. So they're pollinating a pretty big area. So the ones that are on the Johnson property and the ones that are on the agricultural along the lake kind of helps the community quite a bit. Unfortunately, bees die a lot. Mine die every year. I said I'm an amateur beekeeper, not a good beekeeper. So about 55% of the bees died this past winter. That's about 1.2 million hives. So basically anything we could do, or anything you could consider, I guess, respectfully, to make it easier for us amateur beekeepers. I sell our honey. I have 1 hive, so I don't get enough honey, and it's illegal to sell it anyway as an amateur. And it's very expensive. It cost me over $1,000 to start, and it cost me about $300 to $400 a year to operate. So that $300 annual fee almost makes it impossible to be an amateur beekeeper, as well as some of the rules and regulations, which we'll talk about maybe next month. I think my 3 minutes are up unless anyone wants to have. I went to Wind Meadows board for this topic because they actually outlawed bees based on the zoning stuff.
Right.
And my 3 minutes ended up being like 20. So I was like, not bad. But that's all I wanted to do is officially request to be on the agenda or answer any questions about.
I think the agenda that you want to be on is for the village board meeting, right? No, he wants this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I took notes.
We'll
Travis
talk about
taken
it.
Notes.
Action later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
put that forward.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
it's dinner time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, approved meeting minutes from the February 24th Plan Commission meeting. And I saw a typo in there and I wish I had highlighted it. Okay, on page 4 of your packet, the top, it's just a, where it says short-term rental ordinance, it says rental, it should be rental. That's all I saw on the minutes from February 24th. We're not going to have a rental ordinance, we're going to have a rental ordinance. Do you have a motion?
No motion.
Okay, and with the corrections, all in favor to approve the minutes from the February 24th Plan Commission meeting with corrections?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. And then, let's look at the meeting minutes from the public hearing. I didn't see any. All in favor?
Who seconded it?
Colette. Carmen? Did you agree in favor? Okay. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion passes. Okay, zoning administrator report.
So this is something I prepare for all my clients on a monthly basis. It's just a kind of a snapshot of what is pending, what may be coming, any particular interesting or relevant court cases or recent laws, and then an update on what's going on from a code enforcement standpoint. So reports like these kind of staff reports, we can have limited discussion on, not detailed discussion because it's not a conventional agenda item. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask.
Are you talking about everything in your packet? I mean, everything or just the court cases?
Well, no, anything on this. I mean, we can have a brief discussion. I can summarize anything on this in this
Oh,
report.
I was just curious. I read the court cases. We had got this at the board meeting too. I thought they were interesting. And when keeping track of court cases, our little code enforcement issues. So. Does anybody have questions on any of this?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, then I will take that as no questions and we will move on to review and possibly take action on the short-term rental ordinance. I did go through and I just have a question, a couple. And it was on the 180 days. Because I looked at what the state administrative code, whatever it is, and then what the interpretation is. So when I read it, it says, God, I need another pair of cheaters to put on top of this, since the print is so small. It says here, that, the political subdivision, one point, may not specify the period of time during which a residential dwelling may be rented, but the political subdivision may require that the maximum number of allowable rental days within a 365 period must run consecutively. The dwelling, let me see, they may limit the total number of days within any consecutive 365 day period. May be rented to no fewer than 180 days. And then our stuff says no more than 180 days. And so does the Wisconsin Realtors Association. So I'm trying to, I just not sure if I'm interpreting this wrong. I'm reading one thing and then it says another. Because our thing says period of operation of up to 180 days in a 365 day period, which must be consecutive, which we may or may not. We don't have to make it consecutive. I get that part. But it's the, this, we say up to, and this one says no less. So I'm just like, well, which is it?
So the short answer is the language in the draft ordinance is the correct language. The statute I think you're referring to is section 66-1014 sub 2D1.
Oh my God, this is prohibited. Never mind.
Oh, excuse me.
Forget it. Because I did look at more than one thing. And I'm like, okay, I just want to make sure it's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
But we don't have to make it consecutive, right? Because being consecutive, wouldn't it have to be? Well, being consecutive just has to be within the same 6 months. It doesn't have to be this week.
That's correct.
Okay,
so within a period of 180 consecutive days, that's correct.
Right. So, and do we limit that to be a rolling year or what calendar year? And they do a fiscal year for their licensing.
The short answer is yes. So long as you comply with the framework within the statute, yes.
Okay, and well, which do you go by though? Because I believe the licensing is what, July 1st to June 30th?
Correct. So if I'm not sure how to answer that question. If the question is, can you limit it to 180 days and those days are consecutive, the answer to that is yes. If the question is, can you limit to 180 days and those days need not be consecutive, the answer to that question is also yes. But you don't have to limit to 180 days. You're
Would
allowed.
that be in a rolling year or a calendar year?
So, right, and that's the statutes don't specify that.
Okay.
Right? So we leave that. If you're not requiring consecutive days, I would argue that January 1 to December 31st would be the appropriate time frame. If you're looking at 180 days consecutive, it is whenever the first rental of that property occurs. So again, they have to, I'm trying not to make this as complicated. I'm trying not to make this more complicated as I think the more I try to explain it, the more. The short answer is you can do whatever you want. You can make it a rolling year. You can make it a calendar year. You can make it, kind of a quarterly annual report, September 1st or October 1st, entirely up to each municipality. This was the
Yeah, I
start.
can't see how it wouldn't be consecutive, because if you're renting it, you're renting it. When it's not rented, but then it gets rented, it's still consecutive. It has to, unless you do not consider.
So this is the period of operation, though, not so much the rental. So essentially, what the Village of Wind Point can do is say, I'm just picking dates out of the air, right? You're only allowed to rent between July 1st and December 31st. You can do that. Or you can pick a date that encompasses the entirety of the summer. Or you can leave it wide open and just say no more, excuse me, no more than 180 days can be rented within a calendar year. And then we have to have in the license some sort of reporting requirement where that particular dwelling unit, that short-term rental, reports to us every day they're rented.
Oh, so, okay. Now the light is starting to shine, I think. So if they decided to rent it in April, that starts their 180 days.
Short answer is yes, but the more complicated answer is only if the village allows it. So the village can allow it to start for that particular short-term rental whenever they do their first rental. Or the village can actually establish a 180-day period within which all short-term rentals occur. Or you can set two different 180-day periods. One, and each potential short-term rental can choose which window to be in. I mean, there's all kinds of flexibility. In a good way.
Okay, for example, say the village just says, calendar year.
Yep.
Not being picky. We know the best time to rent would be in the summertime, so, but if somebody, rented it in February for Valentine's Day, well, boom, there's your 180 days starts there, so you can only rent it through July.
Correct, which is
The
why
180
that would
days, you're
be,
gonna miss that end of the summer, so
Right.
regardless of, it's a 180 days from that first rental.
if the village choose, if the
If
village.
we did that. If
Correct,
we said, doesn't matter, anytime during the calendar year, but it's 180 consecutive days. So if you wait till June 1st, you've got till December 1st. If you started in March, you've got until October. You know what I mean?
I do, and again, you can do that. I strongly advise against it, but you could certainly do that.
Well, I'm just trying to understand the whole concept of it, but that's how my mind is thinking. We could say you can only rent from April to November or January through June. We could say that. Or have two rental periods, like you said. You've got a choice of which one. Pick one or the other. You can't have both. Because they couldn't, could they? If I'm a short-term rental, do I get more than 180 periods
No.
in a calendar year?
So again, it's hard to answer that question other than to make it seem more complicated, but bear with me. If the 180-day period for every short-term rental starts with the first rental, it is going to be a tracking nightmare for staff. It's just going to be a nightmare. And not only that, it's punitive because you'd have to advise every single short-term rental. And right now there probably aren't many, but you'd have to say, okay, be wary. If you start it because you want to be there for the Packer draft or something, know that you're eliminating potentially high profit dates within your year. So that's not something I'd recommend, but you can do it. On the other hand, if you establish 180-degree window within which all short-term rentals are allowed, that's the easiest. It's the easiest reporting. You just have to pick a date that provides the greatest benefit not only to the village, but ostensibly to those short-term rentals. And clearly in a community like Wind Point, that you're probably looking at the 3 summer months. So you want to encompass them. But if you do it where it starts with Memorial Day, so just kind of doing the math in my head again, and you could cover the holidays too, that's the ideal, right? So the window that most communities will use, tourist communities, Door County, for instance, they want to encompass the entirety of the summer and as much of the holiday season as possible for short-term rentals. Or you do this, again, you just do a reporting, you don't forget about the 180-day window, and you just keep track of you keep track of every short-term rental, and when they get to 180, they're done.
And I get that part.
That one's complicated.
Well, it was for an example, just to try to understand. It's 180 days inclusive, it's whichever, if you did it on an annual, or if you did it for a 6-month period. And if you pick January to June, say you have 2 rental periods, somebody decided, well, I'm going to do the first half of the year or the second half, maybe if you're a community, not Wind Point, but if you're a skiing community, you might want November to March, I get that. But you only have one 180 day, or you could have two, but you could, if I've had a short-term rental, I can only subscribe to one of those periods.
If correct, if that's the way the village were to set it up.
I'm just asking for knowledge. If I was a type of community that had winter and summer that would attract people here, say I lived, I had mountains right here for skiing, but I also have beaches, and it would be, beneficial to have two seasons. And, I just want to know, it's like, well, if I had half of my Airbnbs or short-term rentals take one of the seasons, the other half could take the other. They couldn't take both because of the way our laws are in the state. You can't take more than 180 days. You can't run a short term for more than 180 days. Otherwise, you'd be year round, and then you'd be something else.
I'm not.
Am I confusing you?
I'm not sure if there's a question there, but
well, I'm just trying to clarify that if we should only have one 180-day period, not two, I guess.
Or not have a. Okay, so these are policy questions, and I defer to the Plan Commission, the Village Board. I'll just do the quick Cliff's Note summary one more time. The 180 days can be a non-consecutive total. And that would require that the village establish a reporting requirement so that each short-term rental reports when it is rented out. And when that number gets to 180 days, they're done. That is what many, but not all communities do. The next most popular one is establishing a 180-day window within which you can do short-term rentals. And that is the next most popular one. The problem with that, though, is you basically have to choose which of those 180 days you want. The summer 180, the Halloween, Christmas, New Year's 180. But again, that's option number 2. Option number 3 is you create 2 windows, and the different short-term rentals get to choose which one of those windows they want to be in. Option number 4 is the 180-day window is consecutive, and it starts at the first rental of a short-term rental. That's the worst one, in my opinion. It's the hardest, it's the most difficult to keep track of, it's the most labor intensive, but it's not a big deal in a community that might have a half a dozen short-term rentals over the course of the year. So those are the 4 options out there. This was a starting point for discussion because this is the most common one. But if you would prefer a non-consecutive 180 days, my recommendation would be we create a reporting requirement so that each short-term rental license says every time you rent out, you must provide a total number of days rented and submit that to the village clerk. And then there'd be a log for that short-term rental unit. And each time it came in, Travis or Monica or Hannah would enter that in, and you'd know that there are X number of days left in a calendar year for that particular short-term rental to rent.
Well, then each rental is counted, as 7 days? Because isn't it a minimum?
That's correct. Even though they're really only making money for the 2 days or the 3 days, that rental window has to.
I mean, it's
relatively easy.
And the thing is, if there's a tax on it, which there should be, when they report the tax, whether it's for every rental or monthly, you're going to get that right there to know that it's been rented. So for tracking purposes, I mean, you're gonna get that information anyways. And if it's through Airbnb or VRBO, they report to you. Now, other ones that aren't through those,
right?
you have
So
to rely on the owner.
When it comes to the room tax portion of this, I'm not the right tool for the job. It's outside my area of expertise. I would defer to Attorney Larson or Racine County or whoever your designated expert is.
Yeah, everything I've read is that Airbnb and VRBO actually work with the communities, and because when the people pay it, they're paying the tax and they give the tax to the community. So
Yeah,
you would get that
they're-
notification right there.
They're better at it than they used to be, but they're not great.
Well, I'm not saying they're perfect, but I'm saying this is what I've read.
Yep.
I have no experience with it. I personally never rented Airbnb, so I have no experience with it whatsoever.
At one point, they weren't even giving money, I believe. I think they were just holding it all.
Correct.
Well, and then of course you don't have any control over somebody who puts an ad on Facebook or word of mouth,
Well, I mean, in the sense you do if you're made aware of it. So
if you're made aware of it, that's the thing. And when we talked with the county, that's the ones they could not track.
Yep.
They weren't able to track the Facebook ads. But I think everything else, they were able to.
Right. So most ordinances like zoning and others are complaint based. It's, generally there's not officers or officials that are going through the community looking for violations. So what will definitely happen is it's not going to be someone on staff scouring Vrbo or Airbnb or Facebook or anything at Craigslist, whatever. It will be a neighbor calling Hannah or Monica or Travis or President McCullen saying, what is this? Every weekend there's a new group of people here. There's a party there. It's loud. That's how it's going to happen. That's how you're going to be aware of it or made aware of it.
So what we need to decide is what our recommendations are on how we want these. Do we want to do just 180 days? Do we want to do part of it is we need to talk to the people that are be tracking it. And we're not aware of the Airbnbs in the village. That doesn't mean we don't have them. But how do we want to look at this? Do we want to do a set 6-month period? Do we want to do from the first one forward? I mean, what's your opinion? What's your opinion? I'm going to ask you because you're the one who has to deal with setting up and tracking.
I would say, talking about all staff in the office, I'd say probably picking a season would be the best, I think.
And perhaps that's a starting point. And if it goes well, if it proves to be no big deal, you can always amend the ordinance in the future to allow it to be non-consecutive.
And then how do you deal with when, say we put a March to October, this is for instance, say we do the consecutive March to October, we figure that encompasses, St. Patrick's Day to Halloween. And then people want to rent over Christmas and they rent. So how do we deal with that? Is there fines? Do we fine people for that? I mean, I'm not really sure.
Sure. I mean, there would be a violation of the ordinance, so there would be penalties associated. But the most important punishment is you pull their license. If they don't have a license, legally they can't operate. You report them to DATCAP, and then DATCAP pulls their. I mean, anyone who is doing this is generally how it works. Whether it's honest or not, the first comment will be, "Oh, I had no idea you had to do that. I just thought I could just rent it. I'm so sorry." Basically, they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar kind of thing. And you let them know you can't do that. The moment they're licensed and they know that that license can be revoked for cause, they will become far more cognizant of what is necessary to retain that license, meaning operating within the rules. And again, it's the neighbors or the people in their immediate vicinity that are the most likely to make us aware that there's something happening, whether it is a short-term rental that has not been licensed or one that has been licensed and just has problems. The problem ones tend to be the ones that get all the attention, rightfully so. There don't tend to be that many of those. In my neighborhood right here, there's about 5, like within 3 blocks. And there's one that is clearly the worst of those 5, not intolerably bad, but they've been threatened with revocation of license on a number of occasions. Mostly loud music, litter in other yards, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, again, you can't, the village, just to refresh the baseline stuff here, the village cannot prohibit them. So a short-term rental is allowed if you don't have any, if you don't have an ordinance in place, it's allowed in an unregulated manner, other than they have to comply with DATCAP requirements. But DATCAP's probably not spending a lot of time in Wind Point, which
Yeah.
is given for a short-term rental ordinance in the license. That way you have the ability to protect the citizen, protect your residents, and provide an opportunity for residents to gain a little income from their homes, especially the snowbirds. So the 180, again, the Door County model is often the people who live in who live elsewhere. Their year-round home is not in Door County, but they have a summer home in Door County, and they put their home on Airbnb when they're not up there all summer long. That's the kind of the typical model. That's basically why there's this 180 consecutive thing. Wind Point may not fit into that model too comfortably, because there's lots of stuff happening in the Racine area and Milwaukee area year round. So when you think about it, if somebody's coming from out of state in the middle of winter to see a performance at the Pabst or whatever the case may be, they're going to look for someplace fun to stay. And then they see this beautiful community in Lake Michigan with the lighthouse. So, I mean, there are a lot of arguments for not doing the consecutive requirement.
Well, and that's what I think of, is that there are certain things, you know, around the holidays, and we're not huge. And just based on the number of residents we have, I mean, and homes that we have, and the fact that they can't find any, that's a start. That it makes me wonder that if they are going to do it, it is an opportunity both for them and for the village. It's, you know, tax money. That I don't know that necessarily squeezing it all in a 6-month period over the summer is necessarily the best thing to do. If we were a larger community with, you know, like Wind Lake, I mean, I would probably do the 6-month thing, because they have a lot more Airbnbs out there, and a larger community. They have, you know, these homes literally on the lake that, you know, parents died, kids don't want the house, so the Airbnb it.
Right.
And it's just a revolving door all summer long. And
Right.
I get that part. But it's not really the issue here. And we don't even have the kind of beach they have. If they want a beach, they gotta go to Racine. So
Again, I don't suspect if the plan commission, the village board decide to refrain from the consecutive day imposition, I don't believe this is going to be a significant strain on staff. Travis may know better than I, but just the volume of Airbnb hosts in the village is going to be relatively low. And if the license itself has a self-reporting requirement, in other words, they have to notify the village whenever they rent it out, and that automatically adds 7 days to their tally, and you're basically keeping a rolling countdown starting at 180. I would think this is a simple Excel spreadsheet that is updated on a case-by-case basis. I don't think it would be a lot of time. I mean, I can imagine if I had to do that in, you know, my job right now, with all of my clients, I don't think that would be something that would cause me consternation, but.
yeah, well, I just look at the size of the village and volume here. I mean, I'm guessing if we have any, it's probably counted on one hand.
Right. No, I do notice that I listen to a number of podcasts when I'm driving to client meetings and stuff, and under a number of different sources. And there's a lot of marketing, heavy marketing out there right now by Airbnb and Vrbo on turn your home into a short-term rental, make extra money when you go on vacation, you know, that sort of thing. So at some point, this becomes more ubiquitous in a community like Wind Point. Certainly there in place again, like Sturgeon Bay, Fish Creek, Gibraltar, Port Washington, Cedarburg. I mean, they have many more than Wind Point has, but I don't think it's going to stay that low forever.
Well, it may not, and we can always change it.
Correct.
We don't have that much land to build anything anymore anyway.
Well, the thing is, what they're saying is that the homes that we have, because like, think about our people that live here and have their winter homes in Florida.
Those
You
are
know,
the.
But majority of the time, they're not renting out to anybody. There's only a very few. Years ago, we used to write leases all the time for owners that were just renting out their homes. Even the one on Circle Drive was one example, where the minimum was a year or a year and a half because they wanted to live in the area before they purchased the home. And that was S.C. Johnson. They don't do that anymore. So we don't have that many rentals at all.
Well, no, but what he's talking about, Airbnb, the short-term rentals, those don't fall under that.
No.
These are just for, you know, hey, I'm thinking in terms of, okay, we're having a family event and I can rent this house for the whole family to come and we'll stay the weekend, we'll go to the family event.
Here. My son rented an Airbnb in Caledonia. There wasn't anything around here.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There might not be right now, but there's no saying that there might not be in the future. And sometimes especially with an aging population and the kids get the house. And what am I gonna do with the house? Well, sometimes they fix them up and
Do we have Airbnbs here? We don't have Airbnbs.
not that we're aware of. Not that are
The
being rented.
statutes say we're not allowed in.
Oh, you cannot prevent them. That's
No,
why
every-
we're putting,
That's
Right,
right.
just to be
this is why
clear
we're
on
doing
that,
this.
Yeah.
every single dwelling unit in the village of Wind Point can be utilized as an Airbnb, every single one without any exceptions.
I know, but the majority of homes, even when the parents pass away, are being sold. One behind me is being sold in one day. Everybody wants to live in Wind Point.
Yes, but we're just making a concession here. It might not stay like that in the future.
Right, and
Yeah.
you know, it
we can start off slow. Basically, what I'm saying, if we start off slow by recording them, we can find out how many are there. And if need be, we can then change it to 180 day
consecutive.
if we wanted. But to start off slow, at least we know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And I agree, you know, if I were to pass away, my kids would sell the house,
Yeah.
you know, and because it would go right away.
Yeah, so,
A lot of them have to be updated.
yeah, but they're willing to do it.
I know they're willing to do it, but they want to live here too.
I mean, one other option to consider, again, there's.
Well, like you said, it's only on one handful. I mean, it's not much.
No,
We're
I
too
know,
small.
but the state says we can't prevent this from happening.
Yeah.
So that's why we're putting
So
our
that's why
ordinances
they
saying,
draft.
this is what we can regulate.
Right.
And this is all we can do. So
Exactly.
they still can do it, but at least they have to follow regulations. They have to get a license, they have to get an inspection, they have to follow the rules. And this is what we're going through right now, saying this is the rules that you have to follow if you want to rent out your home or part of your home as an Airbnb.
Mhm.
So, and I think we ought to do the first one, the not continuous.
Like the spreadsheet.
To start with, and
Mhm.
I think we can change it if it turns out there's 20 of them or 30 of them. Well, yeah, we've definitely put in, okay, these are the 6 months that you get to do it.
I think the 180 days is good then,
Yes, and that's part of the law, you know.
because
more than-
most of the snowbirds, actually, it's not even here, it's in Racine. Like Charlottetowners, they do that all the time. Half the third of that building remains in by the time the rest are all gone.
Right.
And they have a 10% rental, so a lot of buildings still empty.
Right, we don't really have apartments here.
But I'm just saying, that's Racine, that's too much.
Right, but we still need to have something in place.
In case.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do the 180 days then.
So, okay,
A couple of comments just to point out, short-term rentals are in the zoning ordinance right now. So it's established that in the zoning, which we need to do because it is a use. So this ordinance is the part that gives us the ability to regulate those uses within zoning. While the discussion was going on, I was just reading through 66-10-14 again, and there's one other option too I hadn't considered, and that is 2 90-day windows. You could have a 90-day window that's June, July, and August, and a 90-day window that is, November, December, January, or something, or October, November, December. You could also do something like that and require that each one of those 90 days be consecutive. So again, there's lots of flexibility. It's just a matter of finding the most efficient version to start with and the one that in the end hopefully benefits the village the most.
And again, this is just short-term rental.
just short term.
All right.
Doesn't include, when you rent your house out for a year,
You're,
anything over
Anybody can do
180
that at
days.
any time.
That's a whole different,
okay,
this is only applies to, addresses, this is the state's addressing short-term rental Airbnb type of thing. And it's giving us the ability to regulate them, because you can't say no. So we're just gonna start with the first option, because we don't know,
yeah.
and see what happens with that.
So the first
And this will be our
option-
recommendation to the board. The board can always change it, I suppose.
see,
If the board says, no, we want to do it a different way.
Are you saying going from Memorial Day to Labor Day? Is that the option?
No, just from
Cumulative 180 days. Keep
cumulative.
track of it.
Yeah.
So, if somebody rents it in January and doesn't rent it again until July, it's just cumulative, it just adds up throughout the year.
So basically, we would just delete the words which must be consecutive. Right?
Yes. And that may get added back in if the village, this is our recommendation to the board, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and then the board may go, no, it has to be consecutive and this is what we want. But I think that we really just don't know what is going to be the best option, and I think this is the best way to start.
What I can say with certainty is this is the best option for short-term rental hosts, clearly. That goes without saying. So if the goal is to provide the greatest degree of flexibility and accommodation for those homeowners who will take advantage of short-term rentals in their homes, this is the best option to remove the consecutive requirement. If the plan commission wants to act on that, I will delete both of these two sections that say which must be consecutive.
What say you? I'm not the only person here.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. That
Yeah.
sounds like the best option to me.
A motion and a second and a vote would be in order.
Do I need a motion? Did you say we need a motion?
Yes, for the plan commission to act on this, yes.
Act on the whole.
So it's a plan, you can do a show of hands if you'd like, but the plan commission has to weigh in, not just, I can't make it, I
I
can't.
thought this was still being discussed, though. I didn't think we'd voted on anything on this yet. I thought.
No, you can vote or show of hands on each individual change, not on the whole, not on the thing. as a whole.
Oh, okay. Well, I just asked them if they wanted to do that. They all agreed verbally.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you agree to the change. I can't see your hand, Carver. You can say aye.
I,
But
I
yes,
can't-
we all
I-
agreed to take off the consecutive portion.
All right, so there are two places where that change has occurred. The days of operation, which is section XX9. And XX8. So sections XX8 and sections XX8 and XX9 are where that change has been made.
Yes. Yeah, and it's just the consecutive part. Okay, and then we have little question marks under XX8, numbers 6, 7, and 9 about the room tax permit, general business license, and room tax ordinance.
Right, so the room tax permit and the room tax ordinance, that would be part of, I think, the discussions you've had with Racine County. And we just want to make, I put the question marks to make sure that those are in place, that you actually have a room tax in the village right now.
Travis,
No, we don't have,
we have no room tax
No.
or no discussions.
we don't,
We don't need any more taxis.
No, this is.
So these aren't,
paid by the
these aren't
people.
that kind of
I'm
tax.
just kidding.
So the room tax, so let me back up. Does Racine County have a hotel and lodging tax?
I'm pretty sure they do.
So if the Village of Wind Point is a party to that room tax, then you can collect taxes on every Airbnb. If you're not party to that, you can't collect taxes on Airbnb. You can't use a short-term rental ordinance to collect taxes. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a room tax ordinance. And the easy thing to do would be to party with Racine County on the one that they have.
And how would we do that?
Have Travis contact Racine County and ask for the details.
Okay.
The question about the general business license, that's just that. I don't know if you have a business license. I assume you don't because you have so few commercial uses. So you don't require a business license for someone to operate a business, correct?
You know, there's a lot of things we don't have.
Right, and so business licenses, again, the main purpose of a license is to have something you can revoke. A driver's license, for instance, you require a driver's license so that you can revoke it and that person can't drive. A business license is the same thing. You have a business that's operating non-compliant with the zoning ordinance or non-compliant with the building code or whatever. And you can certainly take enforcement action through a zoning ordinance, but that takes time and there are hearings and courts. You can revoke a license for cause without having to go through all that. And the moment that license is revoked, you can make that business cease and stop all operations. So my question here is, does the Village of Wind Point have a general business license? I assume the answer was no. If the answer is no, I'm not recommending you create one because I think you only have a handful of small businesses. It doesn't make much sense. Like, in Sturtevant, certainly in Racine, it would make a stronger case. But I just wanted to make sure. If you have a business license, we leave this in. If you don't, we should delete item 7. And the room tax stuff I would leave in until Travis can reach out to Racine County and see what it would, what it would entail signing up the village for that room tax. Short-term rentals are lodging by state. They're, essentially the same as a hotel, a motel, not bed and breakfast.
Right, they have their own whole thing.
Correct. And the purpose of the tax is essentially to cover the costs of regulating and managing short-term rentals. So the Excel spreadsheet that Travis and Monica and Hannah will be working on, those taxes would help towards that. So as far as the Village of Wind Point general business license, the answer is we don't believe we have one, or we're sure we don't have one.
we sure.
Okay.
SC Johnson does not come in and pay that.
Okay, my recommendation then is that we delete item 7. Can always add it again. At some point, if you develop a general business license, you can always add it back in. Thoughts?
think we have a lot more small businesses in this village than we realize. A lot of home based, but whatever.
Would
So
that be against the zoning ordinance? That's against the zoning ordinance.
but
Well,
home businesses and home occupations do not
Home
fall under the
occupations.
general business tax
Yeah.
or general business.
Home
tax.
occupations, but yeah, you're right. Difference. The only other thing I saw was, I just, I mean, it seems to me a lot of this is, pulled from a lot of the different ordinances that I was reading, my eyes started to blur over.
I'm sorry, just so I don't miss it, is the plan commission comfortable with losing the general business license requirement?
I guess so. I mean,
Right,
it is,
I see what you're doing.
being run as a business.
Well, here, okay, let me put it a different way. If you leave this in and you don't have a general business license, you must create a general business license. Do you want to create a general business license and require every business in the community on an annual basis to submit an application for the license and pay the application fee? So every year, usually it's around April, where you'd require every business to come in and pay their $25 or their $50. And it does nothing more than.
We already,
Wait,
you get a business.
you cut out. I'm sorry. You all of a sudden cut out.
I'm not sure where I cut out though.
You said, every year,
So a general business license is something that is typically an annual license in a municipality. And every single business, every year, usually on a certain date, April 1st, whatever, has to submit their payment, which is generally $25 or $50. It's usually really, really low. And the municipality takes that fund and they use it for things that either support businesses or support economic development or whatever the case may be. But the main purpose for that license is if a business violates any aspect of the code, you can revoke the license and stop that business from operating until they bring it into compliance. It's faster and more efficient than going through zoning procedures, which are governed by the state and require public hearings and lawyers and all that kind of fun stuff. If you don't have a general business license in place right now, I think the reason you don't is you've never needed one. And I am absolutely positively not recommending you create one. So if you don't have one, unless you really, really want to create one, I recommend we get rid of item 7.
okay, so then what do we use to, what kind of a license are they gonna have that we can use with Airbnbers to,
That's the short-term rental license.
okay, so that they still gotta get from us?
Correct. This
I
is
know they're going through all kinds of licensing above us, but when they get to us for compliance, if there's issues, and that's another page, and I have some questions on that too.
Sure. So yeah, this section does not apply to the short-term rental license. That's what this whole ordinance is about. This whole ordinance requires a short-term rental license. This would be a situation where you would have a mixed-use structure, for instance, that has a business on the ground floor and a dwelling unit or apartment on the second floor, and they're renting out that apartment. So you'd require you'd require compliance with the general business ordinance or license requirement. Again, this does not warrant any more discussion, I assure you. It should be gone. Take it out. There's no reason for it. If you ever decide to require all businesses to apply for a license, then you'd put this in here, and it still probably wouldn't apply because I don't know if you have a whole lot of mixed use development in the village where you have businesses and dwellings.
I don't think that's the business plaza over there by the bank. There's 2 buildings over there that have,
On the backside?
just north of the bank. There's 2 whole buildings there.
Those little shops by the. Oh, you mean the cleaners?
No, on the north side where the bank is.
Across the street?
Across the parking lot? No, it's on our side. It's North Wing side. There's 2 buildings. Do you ever see them? There's 2 buildings over there that have offices and whatnot. I don't know that there's a lot of that they're occupied, but
Is
I
it Johnson Bank?
exactly, where the Johnson Bank,
And then next
the
to-
bank is right here,
Yeah,
and the parking lot, and then there's two buildings over here.
Those are like, I think financial investment company was in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they are, there's been different companies in
It's
there.
just maybe.
They don't have-
Cars every
Those
well,
day.
they all have licenses, I'm sure, because if you're running any
Yeah,
kind of
some
business, you have to, you have to file your license every year, even realtors have to do that.
Okay, that's a,
Right,
that's. a
but they're
whole
not
different-
filing them with us. Pardon me?
All right, time,
Yeah.
if I can do the timeout just for a second. So DFI requires a license, right? Department of Financial Institution.
Yes,
Accountants require a license. This has nothing to do with that. This is
Yeah.
a Village of Wind Point
Okay.
imposition of a license on all businesses, regardless what the businesses do. The buildings that you were just referring to, do they have dwelling units in them? There are people living in them?
No,
Not as far as we know.
This is not a mixed use either, so that doesn't matter also. So
okay,
again, my understanding is you do not have a general business license. And given that it's 2025, you either don't have a general business license because it's just an egregious error and boy, it's time we didn't even know it. We need to put one of those in place yesterday. Or you don't have one because you don't need it. That's the right answer. If you had 175 businesses in the village, you want a general business license. If you have 12, you don't need a general business license. There are other ways of dealing with this. So this doesn't affect the short-term rental license. It has nothing to do with other licenses that businesses require from the state or whatever, whatever business they're in.
Okay.
okay.
So say au revoir to
Au revoir, everybody
Au revoir.
agree?
They take it out.
take it out.
Yes.
Okay, I crossed it off.
All right, it is now gone.
Find a, bottom of page 21, under site appearance requirements, number 2. I think signage is one word.
Sorry, 1 second. I'm saving this document as a revised version so I don't mix the two up. Okay, I'm sorry, page 21, did you say?
Yeah, or 17, I'm sorry, page 17. Under C, site appearance requirements, number 2.
Sorry, there are only 7 pages in this ordinance, so which,
Oh,
Well, sure.
well, then it's page number 4. I'm
Page
just looking,
4.
I'm sorry, it was up the packet. Page number
Okay.
4.
okay,
Um,
what am I looking at?
C, number
Well-
2,
Signage should be one word.
signage, just should be one word. There's a space in there.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes, that's already corrected.
Okay, so, and
You
then,
still have the original draft. I've corrected some issues that we discussed.
okay, this is the one that we got with our packet, but that's okay.
There's another one, Allison, I don't know, mine says 15 or 21,
15 is where did you see that?
under section, 10, property management requirements,
Uh-huh.
number C, short-term rental application, so we should cross out one.
Oh, okay, on page 2,
Oh, yeah,
Um,
page 2,
on section 10, number C, there's a duplication of words.
Yeah, it's also, that's supposed to be A, by the way. It's section A. It started with C instead of A.
Okay,
should be A,
uh,
should be C.
But yes, rental application has been removed. The
okay. This duplicate. I knew I'd seen something else, but I didn't highlight it. So I'm just looking at the stuff I highlighted.
Travis, can you bring up can we have the discussion about, I think it was defining renter and guest or host and guest or something?
Yeah,
Okay,
let me just pull up the email.
So while Travis is doing that, we're gonna keep the room tax permit and the room tax ordinance language in until Travis gets clarification from Racine County. So those two red question marks will stay for now.
Okay,
The email's on the screen from Colette, with the suggestion.
Section XX 18 definitions, just to clarify the difference between the two.
Is the plan commission comfortable with that, including those two definitions?
do we even have definitions for this?
No,
You will.
So,
I'll prepare definitions for the two.
I mean, of short term for, I don't even see any definitions at all.
we're still under 6, page 6.
No, words defined, okay. Have the people defined.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry, Travis, did you type up that suggestion or was that from Colette?
That's from Colette.
Okay.
I just sent it so Carmen could see it, so.
Yeah, I see it now too. That's fine. If the plan commission agrees, I will make those changes.
Yeah, that would make sense, so.
because I couldn't find.
Yeah, well, because they're, now, isn't in the, but it's defined in here that, only the occupants can stay overnight, right? I thought I read that. That the people that are on the agreement.
It's defining who an occupant is.
Right, no, I know, but I thought I read in here, or it might have been one of the other ones, so that you can't go rent an Airbnb and then have your party and 50 of your friends spend the night, which is a real problem in some areas. And I, like I said, I thought I read it in here, but like I said, my eyes are glazed over from reading all of these different different communities have different things in place, and some are extremely detailed and some are very general.
Can we take a vote for Jeff on if we want to include this or not?
Yes, absolutely. Does
So-
everybody agree to put this in the definitions? Raise your hand. Carmen?
Agree.
Okay.
All right,
That
It
is,
is, it is in the ordinance,
okay.
or they are in the ordinance, I should say.
So one more comment, Jeff, on the words defined.
Okay, so, okay, go ahead.
7.7 and 8. So if you read 0.7, it starts with dwelling unit. It overlaps into item number 8. So you can, I think you need to split them.
I am very sorry. I think what section are we talking about?
It's words defined.
Okay, yep.
So that's with a dwelling unit. It overlaps into number 8. So that statement for dwelling unit continues and then goes into
Yeah.
item number 8. It's a little bit confusing.
Right, if you read it,
Yeah, read
Yeah.
it and then you'll
the
see.
numberings are,
Number 9 should be 8.
No, number 8, number 7 should stop at person or one family, and then number 8 should start at dwelling units.
no, I think dwelling units is part of number 7. I think 8 needs to be moved to where 9 is.
Okay, so just so,
The numbering.
let me clarify this
Just
because I did
numbering.
make a change already. The numbering is incorrect in your version, right? It says words defined and yours starts with bathroom, a full bath, right?
Mhm.
What number is bathroom, a full bath?
That's
5.
Right, that should be number 1. So I've already
Okay.
corrected that.
the number.
So number 3 dwelling unit has been fixed. So it says 1 or more rooms with provisions for living, cooking, sanitary and sleeping facilities. bathroom arranged for exclusive use for one person. Dwelling units include short-term rentals, seasonal and play housing and dormitory units. That corrected the carryover into the second,
Okay,
but it's now starts with item 1. So words defined now has B1 through B50.
Okay,
okay,
yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4.
makes sense.
Okay, I just caught something, since we just defined this, we've got occupants. Maximum occupants, and then okay, so back on page 4. Under section 12, property site operational requirements.
Mhm.
Each short-term rental shall be operated compliant with the following at all times. The requirements for short-term rental guests. Okay, so, are we using guests or occupants?
Number 4.
It's a form that we provide, apparently.
Page 4.
A guest indicates somebody who's not spending the night, according to our definition. So do we
Yeah,
want?
good. That's an excellent catch, President McCullough. That's a problem.
Should be active.
So, you know something, I think we're gonna have to go back and get rid of guest and occupant because everything in the statutes, everything in the guidance from DATCAP refers to guests as the guest who is renting the short-term rental. That's the guest.
Oh,
Okay.
not the occupants.
Correct. But there is something in here that says only,
That's really confusing.
Well, then maybe we should do the occupant / guest.
I think.
I mean, I don't know, but it does state that in the rental operational requirements that your number of occupants guests can't exceed based on the number of rooms. And that, if you have a 3-bedroom home, you can't have more than 6 people plus 2 extra, I think it is, so 8 people. So if you have 12 people spending the night, you're in violation. And 6 cars parked there, it kind of gives you an indication that there might be more people there than should be spending the night.
So let me summarize this quickly if I can jump in. Under the way this ordinance is written, and certainly under the statutes, occupants and guests are synonyms. Right. And although I think Colette's suggestion is fantastic, it does create a conflict within the ordinance and certainly a potential conflict with the generally understood standards in the state.
Right.
So the rooms themselves establish the limit. Right. So
Right.
If we don't, how do I say this? If Travis and I are renting Colette's Airbnb and the maximum number of people that can be in that Airbnb in a given night is 4. If Travis and I have 2 friends stay over, that's fine because we're not exceeding the maximum requirement. Now, Colette might say, hold on now. I charged you for 2, you're bringing in 4. So that's a matter between Colette and Travis and I. But as far as the village is concerned, we only care that there's enough rooms and facilities and towels and toilet paper and whatever the case may be for the maximum number of people that can use that short-term rental.
Oh, I understand that completely. I'm talking about when we have the big parties.
Right.
You have 50 of your closest friends.
Right. So there again, there's not. I mean, I'm not. I'm not sure if legally we could do anything about that. Like we can't say you can stay here, but you can't have a friend in this community you've known 50 years come over and say hi, or 10 friends.
Oh, I'm not talking about having them there.
Yep.
It's the rules specifically state they can't occupy it overnight.
That's is that correct? That's correct. But we don't have to, how do I say this? We don't
I
have
mean, nobody's gonna be policing us unless one of the neighbors call and go,
Yeah.
they're having, they're tent camping in the backyard because they had a big party.
that's clearly not allowed. No
Right, I know
getting
that.
outside.
I read
So the
ordinance.
person will be policing that kind of situation is almost certainly the person who's renting out the Airbnb. Because that kind of stuff is going to cause damage. I mean, there's no way you could, I shouldn't say no way, short of, some sort of weird Ferris Bueller situation. I don't know that you could have 50 people in an Airbnb without the owner knowing that there were a lot more than the 2 or 3 she rented it out to.
Yeah, yeah.
And I suspect if
So-
you had 50 people in there, all of us would find out, even me in Appleton.
So, getting back to the definitions with the guest and occupant. So maybe what we ought to do is, rather than identify them as different, that note that they are synonymous with each other in this, that they're not different. The occupant is the guest, so it's referring to state statutes or state rules or whatever it is. It's not indicating that it's an extra, Because then you've got tourists, which I haven't read in the whole thing. It's, tourists is transient.
So again, it's not that we can't do that, it's that it's unnecessary. Again, using my Travis, Jeff, Colette scenario, all the village should care about is that no more than the maximum allowable people are staying overnight in that facility. And that's what the license has. So if it's me and Travis that have rented it out and it's Travis and I who are there, no problem. If it's Travis and I who've rented it out and Travis and I invite a bunch of friends over because we're going to watch the Super Bowl, still no problem. If those friends all decide to stay there that night, now the short-term rental is in violation. And if we become aware of that, we would take action against the short-term rental. And that would be notifying Colette that, hey, there weren't 2 people or 3 people in there overnight, there were however many. So defining the statutes and the way this ordinance is written, it's all about the guest occupant or guest occupants. There's no differentiation between those two. And if there's no differentiation between the two, then there's no need to actually define what those terms are.
Okay, then don't.
Yeah, so they may probably.
I still think for Colette, I think it was a great idea. I mean, just unfortunately, it bumped into a problem that you, President McCullough, discovered. And I'm glad we caught that.
Well, the question is under A, where it says requirements for short-term rental guests, is that going to be guests or occupants or both? Form, and it's a form that we apparently are going to produce. On page 4.
I'm sorry, I thought that was a statement, not a question.
No, it was kind of a question.
Okay.
Because that's where it says yes, and we were talking occupants, and it's like, well, which is it, or does it matter?
If you want, we can change that to occupants. If that
Oh,
makes
I don't care what we do, I would be asking, does it matter? If it doesn't matter, then leave it as it is.
So if that's the only place I suspect what happened is one ordinance I was looking at focused entirely on occupants and another one either
Yes.
the term
Yes.
guest or,
Yeah,
so probably the best thing to do is to change that from guest to occupants. Requirements for short-term rental occupants. And if everybody
more
thinks that, that's
Yeah.
easy, then we don't have to worry about differentiating between those two words.
Yeah, that's more meaningful for what it is actually.
I mean, to me, a guest is like somebody who invited to your house,
Exactly.
and isn't sticking around.
Yes.
you know. An occupant is somebody who's there, you know, is paying to be there.
Renting,
Yeah, that
renting.
would be the right legal name.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it makes it far clearer. And we don't have to deal with the ambiguity of, well, what's the difference between these two words? So,
And that's how people, you know, get around this. Well,
Yeah.
wasn't clear, the verbiage. It's
Can I have
just
some
me.
clarification, Allison? Can I have
Pardon me?
some clarification? So if you wanna use your home, if you want as a short-term rental, you have to get a license.
Mhm.
And then you have to abide by section 16. But if you get license, would you be advertising it on the internet? Not
Well, if
necessarily.
you say you wanted to do it through Airbnb,
Yeah,
well, you gotta go do whatever what Airbnb.
you have to do
wants.
whatever. Don't they, I think that when you spend time in an Airbnb, let's say, you know, you go up north for a couple days, they usually send you a review, don't they? How was your room? How was the cleanliness? How was the
Yes, they do.
accommodations?
The feedback.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so the feedback actually, I mean, I would keep this in there, but the feedback does control where these people are staying a lot of times.
How does it control feedback? You're just giving feedback.
Cause you're giving feedback, did you like the accommodations, yes or no, what was wrong with them? It's just like, you know, you make a doctor's appointment, was your, did you get your questions answered? Were you satisfied? Everybody has these reviews when you do something.
So you mean the control you're talking about, in controls
Is
in
the
terms of
Airbnb
of a
review,
good?
yeah,
Or is it a good one or a bad
and
one?
it's right there on the internet.
Oh, okay.
Right, but are you looking at something on that?
No,
No.
I'm just looking at penalties and license revocation, and I'm thinking, some of these, I would leave them, but I'm just saying, a lot of these would be, taken care of by the review.
Oh, yeah, well.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, and that was where we come to my next question. Because it, you know, it says that the license may be revoked for one or more of the following reasons. So when it says, like we have violations of other chapters of the village code, or 3 or more police officer verified violations, 3 or more issued citations. But what if you got, I mean, and I'm just asking a question for my own knowledge, because I realize it's gonna be up to us to determine if something gets revoked. Ultimately, I believe, or you, I don't know, Travis. But what if you get, you know, one police officer, one health department, and, you know, something from the village code? So one of each. You didn't get 3 of each, but you got 1 of each, totaling 3. Would that constitute, I mean, I'm just not really sure. Is this kind of opening us up for having a little bit more, you know, this is a problem property, you know, and yes, you didn't get 3 police, you know, the cops didn't show up 3 times in a year, but, you know, you've had concentrated issues. I just don't know. I'm just trying to understand.
I think I understand the question. So of the A through F listed there, the only 2 that have the word 3 in it are C and D. So
Right.
if A, B, E, or F, any one of those 4 in and of itself is sufficient for revocation.
Okay.
In terms of C or D standing alone, it would have to be 3, unless you want it to be 2 or 5 or 1. I mean, 1's pretty hardcore, but again, this is up to you as a plan commission and village board. So if you think the number of 3 is too lenient, make it 2.
Well, and I look at it too, it's like, well, I guess it really depends on what the violation is.
Well, and that's why, so 3 is
So,
it's the kind of, how do I say that? It's the mean on the bell-shaped curve, right?
yeah,
The moment you divert from it, you're becoming more restrictive or less restrictive. And you should do that if your desire is to be more restrictive or less restrictive. There is a little bit of a wisdom to the masses here, which leads me to think that 3 is the right number for most communities, but that doesn't mean it's the right number for Wind Point. That's a policy.
well, I believe that our public will let us know. Because
I
if there's a
agree.
real issue, they'll be calling.
Oh, yeah.
As we know, they will. So I'm
Another
fine
way of
with
looking at
3.
it is this way. If, let's say you keep the number at 3. That short-term rental that regularly has 2 annual police citation or police visits, I bet they're ticking off some other boxes here too. So I'm pretty sure we would have the ability to revoke a license, even if it was just as a continuing nuisance. And again, we have those too, because all we have to do is 1 citation of the nuisance ordinance, which can be noise, can be light, can be trash, can be unmowed lawns, can be litter going outside the property. We cite them for that, and we're now in violation of one other chapter of the village code. So I don't, believe me, that list of 6 things, it would be really tough to have a problem that would somehow squeak through.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just, I just want the residents to understand that, we have this here and it's to protect the village as much as it is the rental, the people doing the Airbnb, but, it's to protect our village and, we're not gonna let haphazard or irresponsible owners is what it really
I think,
comes down to.
If
So-
I may, the way I would recommend characterizing this whole thing is, because the initial reaction is, why are you telling people what they can rent and all that kind of stuff? That's going to be the initial reaction. It makes perfect sense. And the moment I hear that, I immediately turn it around. I say, that's absolutely not what this is about. A poorly operated short-term rental has negative effects on the adjoining properties, and if severe, can have negative effects on the entire neighborhood. And again, there's one in my neighborhood that isn't too far away from that threshold. So this isn't about punishing or over-regulating a person. It's about ensuring that it's done right, so you're not negatively impacting people who bought a house in a neighborhood where they didn't realize they were living next to a hotel now. That's really what this is all about. And again, once the ordinance is adopted, we can create guides and we can, that's all in. We've talked about that a little bit. Cheat sheets that are made available to the Airbnb, the short-term rental renters. I'm sorry, the owners of short-term rental, and then cheat sheets for the people who are taking advantage of those short-term rentals.
Yeah, sure. Does anybody else have any questions or concerns on what we have here in this short-term rental ordinance?
Yeah, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
On, I guess it's page 17 of 21, it starts the neighborhood impact requirements. It continues on to page 18 of 21, and it's number 3.
Yeah, I'm
No ve-
sorry, if I could jump in, could you give me, I'm actually looking
4
at
and 5.
this right now that go ahead.
Fine,
Page
page 4
4
and
and
5.
5.
Page 4 and 5. Okay, and neighborhood impact. Got it. Thank you.
It starts on 4 and continues on to page 5. Number 3 at the top. No vehicle or traffic shall be generated by the short-term rental at levels exceeding those typical for a detached single-family dwelling. So that's pretty subjective, the word typical. Now,
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's intended that way, meaning that the burden would be on the village to justify or defend revoking a license based upon traffic. So the short answer is this: a single-family dwelling in the United States of America generates 9.57 ADT per day. So that means, on average, every house, detached single-family dwelling, there are just under 10 vehicle trips, 10 ingress egress events during a day. So if we were to revoke a license from a short-term rental under this, what we would have to say is, listen, the average is 9.57 and you've had 74, right? Or it's 9.57, you've had 20. It's going to be harder if we say, you know something, you've had 12, so we're going to revoke. So it establishes a standard that's based upon existing data regarding how much traffic a single family dwelling actually generates. Does that make sense?
Yes, so if somebody's reading this, how do they know that? You know the statistics.
It's not, and this is going to sound cold. It's not important that they know it. It's important that we know it, so that we can say, if somebody is in a short-term rental and they're generating 15, 20, 30, 40, they're creating a problem for that neighborhood. The use has now exceeded what would be typical of a single family dwelling in that neighborhood. And now that doesn't mean we have to take action, but that gives us the ability to take action if the village determines that the number of trips is excessive.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good, again, really good point. Good question.
And we did talk about this the last time about the no outdoor activity.
Yep.
Between 10 and 7. So it's like, I guess it was more loud. So, I mean,
It's the 4th of July.
well, yeah.
Remember the discussion a bit. It was really about what activity means, and walking out in the backyard to look up at the stars, or taking a walk, or letting the dog out, or going outside and getting in the hot tub. None of that stuff would apply. Activity would mean there's some sort of activity. We decided to play pickleball in the backyard, or frisbee golf, or whatever.
Any other comments, questions, suggestions?
I guess I guess I left early last time. I guess it probably is covered under the minutes about the federal and state regulations. I guess I brought up a question about the American Disabilities Act, and I guess that would be covered under their interaction with either the state or the federal government. Is that true?
Yeah, that's another excellent question, and it's covered, but not in terms of imposing ADA requirements on a single family dwelling. So if you rent out, the federal law, the federal government has no authority over Vrbo and Airbnb and all that kind of stuff. But Section 208 and other sections of the Americans with Disabilities Act do not apply to short-term rentals, other than DATCAP has to issue a permit, and rooms have to be compliant with building code, doorways have to be compliant with building code, all that kind of stuff. So if you have an older structure, an older house that has narrower doorways and such, it can still be a short-term rental, and it won't be compliant with ADA. I do have another community that's going through the same thing right now. We're talking through it, and their attorney is looking into this. I responded similar to what I did now. So once I get the response back from their attorney, I can share it with you. But my understanding is does not apply. Just don't hold me to that yet.
That's all I have.
Pardon me?
It's only is.
Oh, okay. So changes that we agree upon. At this point, we should pass. Do you want it to come back to us once the changes and look at it one more time, or should we go ahead and pass it on to the board? I'm asking your opinions here.
think it's good enough to pass on the board now.
Pass it on to the board.
Okay.
I think we really scrapped it.
Don't we have to hold a public hearing first?
Sorry. Well, whatever,
I can go to-
whatever the next step is, 'cause, you know, I'm not the pro here. I'm kind of saying this with trepidation. I'm hoping somebody will jump in. Thank you, Travis.
And I guess we want to make sure Eric reviews it too, I guess.
Yeah.
And then probably you get one more set of eyes, I would say, and make
Yes,
sure, and
well
then schedule a public hearing.
Thank you. So this is ready for the next step. How's that?
So
do
let's
we have a motion?
postpone-
We need to move it?
Postpone until the next.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I
Until-
move,
I just emailed the revised version of the ordinance to Travis, so he can distribute it to you when he can. Right, the next step is send it to Attorney Larson, because again, in Wisconsin, only a licensed attorney can practice law, and the drafting of an ordinance is the practice of law. So when someone who's not a licensed attorney writes an ordinance, it needs to be reviewed by a licensed attorney before it can take legal effect. So short-term rental ordinance should go to Attorney Larson. That said, it can go to the village board if you want, but the next step would be, the appropriate next step would be, with the Plan Commission's agreement, is to schedule a public hearing.
so we will,
It'll go to the village board after the public hearing, and then they can weigh in.
So we're saying it's better to go to the attorney first to make sure that it's compliant, and then have a public hearing, and then go to the board.
Correct, although the first two steps can be concurrent, because whatever comments Attorney Larson provides would be testimony for the public hearing. So it's really about, this can happen as slow or as fast as you as a Plan Commission want. If you want to expedite it, you would send it to Attorney Larson, and we'll start considering dates for the public hearing. If you want to take it nice and slow, send it to the village board, get their feedback, they send it back to you. It'll already have gone to Attorney Larson. Once you get Attorney Larson's comments and the village board's comments, make whatever changes are necessary, then schedule a public hearing. All the options are up to you. The only certainties are attorney review, public hearing, recommendation from Plan Commission to village board to adopt. And then publication notice after the fact.
I've been liking the way we've been doing it. I think it's been really
Yep. Same,
consistent.
same process.
okay, so then we will,
Have a public hearing with you guys and then recommend it to the board
but after.
Attorney.
after the public hearing and after Eric.
Right.
The public hearing after Eric. Is that what you just said?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, so then in the meantime, we will postpone this until
the public hearing.
the public hearing, at which time we should have the feedback from Eric.
Yeah, attorney, yeah.
I move
Schedule
that we
the,
postpone this
you can
until,
schedule the public hearing for next month's Plan Commission meeting, for instance.
schedule a public hearing after we heard.
Because
back
I
from-
presume it's only 7 or 8 pages long, so I assume Attorney Larson's not gonna need, weeks to review it. And he'll
We've
probably-
got a lot he's on his plate. He's reviewing it might take a week, so I wouldn't say let's not make any promises. He's got a lot he's reviewing for us, so.
Yeah, you know his workload.
Thanks for the education, Jeff.
You're very welcome. I mean, some of this is, this is on both ends here. Like I said, I've written a couple of these before, but they were much, much more concise for communities that don't have the needs or the challenges that Windpoint might have. I've never written one for a community in Door County, at least not up in the northern end of Door County. So I learned a little bit going through this process that I didn't know before I did. Which is good, right? All of us learn a little bit more every day, and
Second.
Okay,
Oh, I'll second.
okay. All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Abstain, and, okay. You still need guidance, don't ever be afraid to jump in and tell me what I'm doing. Okay, discussion on the revised zoning map.
the
Did we
incredibly
revise colors?
the incredibly bold zoning map that BAW Cartography prepared. So you
Of course,
recall,
I printed mine up, I printed half of it.
we
Excellent.
originally selected option 3 of those first 3 drafts. And then the comments that came back, if I remember correctly, had to do with inability to differentiate the greens and the blues and the lighter and all that kind of stuff. So what Ben did is prepared the map you see before you, and he sent it to me and sent an email and said, "What are your thoughts?" And I wrote BOLD exclamation point. And he immediately called me and said, "You don't like it?" I said, "No, I kind of love it. It's just, it's bold. I mean, it's definitely, there's no question whatsoever differentiating between district properties on this map."
I had a question, Jeff. On
Yes,
the
sir.
in the bottom of that map, right where the city of Racine starts, you have that yellow strip. That's part of a trail, but it's known, it's sounds like a medium density single family residence. Is that just the way it's presented in the Racine plat?
So are we talking about the vertical kind of monolith or the bottom strip?
That's correct. The one down there at the bottom.
That little bottom strip.
On
Okay.
the border of Racine, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm learning a little bit more about Village of Wind Point every day, and apparently somebody in your past loved the concept of spite strips. So these things, every once in a while, another one will pop up. The one that Travis and I have considered ad nauseum is a 336 Deepwood Drive. I suspect those are spite strips. I don't know why they were put in place. I mean, usually they do it as their name implies, but I don't have a good answer for you on that, other than Racine County has that identified as R2 district. That doesn't necessarily mean the use of that little strip is residential. It certainly could be whatever you know it to be, trail or whatever.
That strip
But yeah.
is belongs to S.C. Johnson.
Got it.
Safe densities and compatible inheritance in the description.
This.
I notice if you go to where the tower is, for instance,
Is that you?
and you had 2 parcels north of,
You're in here, right?
The yellow, which is the
so if you look at that light key, let me look at the term. So the R1 estate residential, there are 3 parcels north of the tower, north of where you are right now. And the northernmost of the 3 larger parcels, there's a spite strip there. Now that one could have been created to provide access to Lake Michigan, which makes sense. Someone created an easement historically, so the property on the western, the kind of that western green could have access. But there are a number of them in a community that's a community of this size. I'm a little surprised by how many there are.
Yeah, that little green strip is like a little park for the residents. There's a gate there to go into leads down to the beach.
Okay, that makes sense. I like those kind of strips. I don't like the ones that have no reason whatsoever and you have to deal with them years and years. I grew up in Shawano. I'm not sure if you know where that is, but around Shawano Lake, this is quite some time ago. There's probably more. They'd have the first ring of cottages, and then there was the second ring, and then there was the third ring. So if you want to rent out a cottage on Shawano Lake and you're in the third ring, you have to let them know that they have access to the water. So all of those individual second, third ring lots would have this tiny little easement that would allow someone to walk from ring number 3 through ring number 2 and ring number 1 to dip their toes in the water. This kind of stuff typically happens in places that are beautiful. Really doesn't happen in places where nobody really ever wants to go. So if that's anything, that means anything, there's a compliment to the village. So all that aside, what are your thoughts on the colors of the map? Are they too bold? Do you like it?
Oh, much better.
Yeah.
Much better.
Okay.
Okay with it, yeah.
So again, there's no changes to the map, right? The colors are not a substantive change, so you don't have to approve it or adopt it or anything. The only difference is the colors. So this can then just get posted on the village website and this becomes the zoning map.
Yeah, much different, much better. Thank you.
I will let Ben know, he'll be pleased. I think people who are graphically inclined get bored doing the same stuff all the time, and
It's when you start seeing the two colors next to each other, I'm like, wow, they're so similar. And then with the water, you know, laying in an area, and it's like, okay, now the colors are a little different. And I know it was.
and interesting, I mean, everybody probably knows this, but we all see colors differently. And for me, the problem is always yellows. So generally residential districts would be yellows and commercial would be reds and industrial would be gray and institutional would be purple and all that stuff. Well, the problem is if you have 4 or 5 residential districts, you have a continuum or a spectrum of yellow, and you can tell the difference between number 1 and number 5, but man, number 2 and number 3 look pretty close. And depending upon the type of monitor you have, whether you're operating on a Windows-based or an Apple-based product, the yellows are different. So it can be a nightmare. So finally I told Ben, stop doing what all the zoning gurus tell you to do and just create a map that is easily differentiatable, if that's a word. And certainly this one does that. So
Yeah,
Good
we're
on
pretty
you.
easy. We just needed to be able to read them, and that, you know.
right, and that's what it's about. I mean, if it looks good, great. But so long as you can tell where one stops and one starts, or more accurately, you don't have to pull up 2 different versions of the map and then move the legend next to the parcel to make sure the colors line up. Right here, if it's purple, it's purple. If it's green, it's green.
Well, thank you so much for everything tonight, Jeff.
You're welcome. Thank you. I mean, I'm enjoying this.
I'm sure we'll see you next month. I'm not sure. We want to try.
For number 9, Jeff, for referrals, do you want to go over our
Sure.
beekeeping friend?
Right. So again, because it was an agenda item, we can't discuss the content of the public comment. But you do have 2 options available to you right now. Option 1 is what I think Mr. McCleary suggested. And as you may know, I spent about 40 minutes on the phone with Mr. McCleary. Travis had at least 1, if not more, conversations with him. The Plan Commission has 2 options. You can just add this to the agenda as a discussion item in April, or you can schedule a public hearing in April and consider draft revisions to the ordinance, because Travis and I both know what he is requesting. I've communicated with President McCulloch on this matter as well. And again, I can't go into the details on it because I would be discussing an item that's not on the agenda. But it would be, there'd be written testimony provided, probably by Mr. McCleary, possibly by others. There would certainly be testimony that I would be providing, recommendations that I would be making regarding various components of the requirements. And then you as a Plan Commission would hear that testimony. Once the hearing is over, you'd be able to have the exact same discussion that you would be having if we don't have the hearing. It's just that you would have put a check in the hearing box. So if it's discussion in April, that means it can't be a hearing until May. And the problem from the perspective of a beekeeper is that's a lot of time lost, or a lot of time to be in kind of a gray area whether or not you're actually doing something that's lawful or not. So
Do we have to be concerned about what Wind Meadows has in their?
No, we dictate over what Wood Meadows does. They can do anything. They can't do anything less than what we have.
correct. They can establish more stringent requirements than the village, but they cannot adopt lesser requirements. The only exception to that, by the way, is short-term rentals. So Wind Meadows is one of the places that can absolutely prohibit short-term rentals.
But if theirs are stricter than ours,
There's nothing we can do.
We have no authority over it.
so should we know what theirs are concerning bees.
I
Um,
don't, I
Go
think
ahead,
that's still, I think what I've heard, they're working with him still on that, so we don't know what they're doing yet.
Because we've had this happen before where we've had people from Wind Meadows come here trying to get us to okay something that they've done that was wrong both on ours and on Wind Meadows.
so the short answer, and then as you know, I'll probably turn it into a longer answer, but the short answer is yes. The Village of Wind Point should establish regulations that are appropriate for the Village of Wind Point. Wind Meadows should establish covenants that are appropriate for Wind Meadows. Those covenants cannot be less restrictive than the Village of Wind Point's ordinance requirement. The dog in this scenario is the Village of Wind Point. The tail is Wind Meadows. So we should wag the tail, not the other way around.
Can I just say something? Just one comment that I heard at the Wind Meadows meeting is that their issues with the signage. There's
Mr. Gasparo, we can't.
okay, we can't talk about it.
Correct. We can talk like big picture stuff, but we can't get into the detail of it. It would be not an agenda item.
Yeah, I'll bring it up when they have the public meeting.
Yes, sir. Sorry to jump in like that.
Thank you. Still learning.
Me too. Who was the idiot who said one day and you have to take your oaths?
So, are you suggesting that we do, a hearing sooner than later? And could we encompass, and we're talking about this agenda item or referral, I mean. Do we have to do a separate hearing for the ordinance and a separate hearing for, the agenda, the referral on the beekeeping? Or can we have one public hearing that encompasses both?
Okay, are you talking about short-term rental and beekeeping?
Yeah,
Okay, has to be separate. So it can be the same evening, but you can open a public hearing for the short-term rental ordinance. And then when the hearing's over, you close that. And then you open the public hearing for potential amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding beekeeping and keeping of chickens. And then you close that, and then you'd open the plan commission meeting. So what I'm saying is this. If we do what was suggested and we place this item on the plan commission agenda for discussion next month, if the plan commission says this sounds like a good idea, then we would schedule a public hearing for May. If we were to schedule the public hearing for April, you'd still have the plan commission discussion that you would have under the first scenario. You just have it after the public hearing has been held. So you've done the two birds, one stone. I don't like that analogy. I like birds. You've accomplished two things at one meeting without any negative, because Travis and I and President McCullough and Mr. McCleary all know exactly what is going to be requested in terms of changes to the zoning ordinance. So if you post the notice, a hearing to consider revisions to section this and section that, then we can hear all the testimony or receive written testimony. Once the hearing's over and we close it, the plan commission will discuss it and then make a recommendation to town village board. So from a time standpoint, this is much better for anybody to be affected by the ordinance. From a logistical standpoint, there is no downside. It's not as if holding the hearing and you're doing too much, or you're still going to have the same opportunity to have exactly the same discussion that you'd have without the hearing, but you will have put a check in the "we had the hearing" box. Does that
no, it makes complete sense. And do we know?
We'll get dates from Jeff.
Okay.
April's really booking up. There's
April's gonna be.
we've got a lot going on.
Yeah, my schedule in April is a little bit less crazy than this month has been kind of nuts. And I suspect when we get into May, June, July, and August, I'd say my hair will start falling out, but clearly that's not going to be a problem. But But April's looking a little bit less chaotic for me.
We'll get dates from you and I'll pass it along since not everyone's here, so we'll follow up with that.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay,
Thank
so our referrals are to set up the public hearings for the short-term rental and the planning commission meetings. Send the short-term rental ordinance to Eric for review.
And just to answer a question that hasn't been asked, the text amendments that are likely to be considered as part of the potential amendments to the zoning ordinance, those do not have to go for attorney review. We're not adding additional requirements. We're not creating new uses. We're just amending existing uses potentially. So that does not have to go for attorney review. You can if you want.
For
but
the beekeeping.
Oh, okay. I
Beekeeping.
see what you're saying. I'm just like, got all these ordinances we're talking about. I'm like, which ones? Okay. Okay, so if is everybody good on where we're at right now? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I second.
Okay. Colette, I did hear, she's so quiet, but I did hear her, and Rosa seconded. The meeting is adjourned at 7:20.
Don't really so.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.